Commander Jace Rennick leaned back in his chair, watching the quiet stars outside the window of the Phoenix horizon. It had been 3 months since he joined the Interspecies Alliance's exploration program. The Phoenix horizon was a diplomatic and science vessel, home to over 20 alien species. Yet Jace was the only human on board. He didn't mind. Humans were still new to the Alliance, and many species were cautious around them. Some found humans unpredictable. Others thought they were primitive. Jace had gotten used to the strange looks, the whispers, and the careful questions. "Commander Rennick," said the voice of the ship's AI through the intercom. "A new crew member has been assigned to your living sector. She will arrive in 10 minutes. Jace raised an eyebrow. "My sector? Why not the standard guest pods?" "She is part of the Threxian research team," the AI replied. "She requested quarters near the core systems. Yours is the only available unit." Jace sighed. Threxians were not known for being friendly. They were intelligent, serious, and had a reputation for following protocol to the letter. He had never met one face to face. 10 minutes later, his door chimed. Jace opened it. Standing there was a tall figure in a silver-blue uniform, her skin a light lavender color with glowing teal eyes. Her long hair, tied back, shimmered like polished stone. She stood perfectly straight, holding a small case and a datapad. "Lieutenant Velia of the Threxian Science Corps," she said, her voice calm and clear. "I was told this unit has space for a secondary guest. May I enter?" Jace stepped aside. "Sure, I'm Commander Jace Rennick. Welcome to our room now, I guess." Velia walked in, looked around without expression, and placed her case on the lower bunk. She didn't smile, didn't nod, just tapped her datapad and started setting up her sleep cycle schedule. Jace watched her for a moment, then went back to his seat. He knew better than to push small talk on someone who clearly wasn't interested. After a few minutes, Velia looked up. "You are Terran?" Jace paused. "Technically, yes." She tilted her head. "You are not entirely human." "Then?" He smirked, "something like that." It wasn't a lie, just not the full truth. She seemed to assume he was a hybrid of some kind. Maybe enhanced. Maybe from one of the fringe colonies. Jace had no reason to correct her. "Interesting," she said softly, turning back to her datapad. "Your species is known for irregular behavior, risk-taking, emotional outbursts. That is not optimal in controlled environments." Jace just chuckled. "You'll find I'm full of surprises." That earned him a small glance. Not exactly warm, but not hostile either. More curious than anything else. Over the next few days, Velia stuck to a strict routine. She worked long hours in the lab, ran diagnostics, analyzed stellar data, and filed reports with perfect timing. She barely spoke except when necessary. Jace kept things relaxed. He cooked basic meals, played soft music when she allowed it, and didn't ask too many questions. Still, he noticed how she kept watching him when she thought he wasn't looking. 1. Morning. A power conduit near the room sparked and flickered. Lights dimmed and a soft alarm buzzed. Jace stood up, rolled up his sleeves, and opened the access panel. Velia stepped back, surprised. "Shouldn't we call engineering?" Jace shook his head. "It's a small fault. Probably a worn cable or failed coil. I've got it." She frowned, but said nothing. Jace reached inside, reconnected a loose wire, and rerouted the current manually. Within seconds, the lights returned to normal. "You did not follow proper procedure," Velia said. Jace wiped his hands. "I followed the fastest one." Velia's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in confusion. Most would not risk direct contact with open current. Jace just smiled. "Most aren't human." Velia paused, then returned to her work without a word, but her eyes lingered a little longer that evening. Later, when Jace was pretending to be asleep, he heard her quietly reading something on her datapad. Human, Terran origin, behavioral traits, flexibility, aggression, creativity under pressure. She stopped there. Jace smiled to himself. Let her wonder. Days passed quietly on the Phoenix horizon. The stars outside kept moving, But inside, routines stayed the same. Commander Jace Rennick and Lieutenant Velia shared the same space, but they didn't share much else. Yet, Velia continued her work in the science lab. She never missed a shift. Her reports were always perfect. Her movements were exact, like she was programmed to be efficient. She barely spoke unless she had to. Most of her words were about systems, data, and protocols. Jace, on the other hand, moved with ease. He didn't rush, but he got things done. He cracked jokes with the maintenance crew, played games with the AI in his free time, and sometimes fixed things himself when others were too slow. Many officers on the ship found him strange, but strangely reliable. Velia still hadn't figured him out. One evening, after another long day, Velia returned to the shared quarters. Jace was sitting, cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by small mechanical parts and tools. A small drone hovered in the air, spinning unsteadily. Velia blinked. "That is a Class 3 recon drone. Why is it here?" "I found it in the storage bay," Jace said. "It was broken. Thought I'd fix it." "You are not trained in Threxian, drone tech." "True, but I've got hands, tools, and curiosity." The drone beeped twice, then crashed onto his lap with a soft thud. Jace sighed. "Still working on it?" Velia crossed her arms. "You tampered with military-grade equipment without clearance." Jace looked up. "I asked the AI. It said no one had claimed it in over a year." She frowned. "Even so, you should have filed a repair request." "By the time someone gets to it," he said, "the drone would be rust, if it could rust." There was silence for a few seconds. Then, surprisingly, Velia walked closer. "May I see it?" Jace handed it over. She studied the inside wiring carefully. "You connected the neural cable to the sensor loop," she said. "That is incorrect," Jace shrugged. "Well, now I know." Velia began fixing the connection. "You work without planning. It is dangerous. I work fast. That's how we do things back on Earth." "You are from Earth?" Velia asked without looking up. Jace froze for a second. "Yeah, I thought you knew. I assumed you were born on a Terran colony. Hybrid, perhaps." "Nope. Full human." Velia stopped working and looked at him. Her expression was unreadable. "I see." She returned to the drone. Jace watched her carefully. "Is that a problem?" She didn't answer right away. "My people studied humans," she finally said. "Your kind is unpredictable. You follow emotions. You disobey orders. You fight when others would surrender." Jace nodded. "That's not wrong. And yet you are respected on this vessel. You work alone, but others rely on you. That's the human way. We figure things out as we go." She finished adjusting the drone and handed it back. "You are strange." "Thank you," Jace said with a grin. Velia didn't smile, but something in her eyes softened. The next day brought a surprise. During Velia's research presentation in the science bay, the power flickered. Then a loud alarm rang through the ship. "Warning. Life support systems offline in Sector C." Velia's eyes widened. That included her lab. She looked around. Engineers were already rushing, but things were moving slow. Jace was already moving. He tapped his comm. "AI, show me the power flow map for Sector C." Displaying now. Velia followed him, confused. "You are not an engineer." "No, but I know how the ship breathes." They reached a narrow maintenance tunnel near the power core. A small door was locked. "Access denied," the AI said. Jace pulled off the panel and manually rerouted the circuit. The door opened. Velia stared in disbelief. "You bypassed security?" "Technically, I fixed security." Inside, smoke filled the tunnel. A capacitor had blown. Jace coughed but crawled inside with a toolkit. "Stay here," he said. "This part's messy." Velia didn't stay. She crawled in behind him. Together they worked fast. Jace connecting cables and fuses, Velia guiding him with system knowledge. Within minutes, lights returned and the alarm stopped. Back in the hallway, Velia sat on the floor, catching her breath. "You didn't hesitate," she said quietly. Jace looked at her. You didn't either. She looked at him again, more closely this time. You risked damage to your body to protect systems. Jace smiled. It's called teamwork. For the first time since they met, Velia gave a small nod. You are still strange, Commander Rennick, she said, but useful. I'll take that as a compliment. And just like that, something changed. Not everything, but something. Life on the Cinex horizon followed a 28-hour cycle. Every crew member had a shift, and every system had a routine. But space was never predictable. One quiet night, the ship approached a strange area near a collapsing wormhole. The energy readings were unusual but not dangerous. At least not yet. The AI suggested careful observation. Captain Torin agreed. The ship stayed on course, slowing down as it entered the edge of the anomaly. Jace Rennick was off duty, finally, resting after a long day. He lay on his bunk with his hands behind his head, half asleep. Across the room, Velia sat at her desk, reviewing data logs and energy patterns. Her shift was about to begin. At exactly 03 hours ship time, the lights flickered. Velia stood up quickly. The wall screen began flashing red. Warning: communication systems offline. Navigation drift detected. She tapped her comm badge. No signal. The AI wasn't responding either. For a moment, Velia felt something she rarely felt. Uncertainty. She was trained for data, not real-time danger. Commander Rennick, she said, turning toward the bunk. Jace was already sitting up. What happened? Systems are failing. We've lost contact with the bridge. Jace was on his feet in seconds. Grab your toolkit. We're going to the auxiliary control room. They moved quickly through dim corridors. The ship was quiet, too quiet. No voices, no foot traffic, just the distant hum of emergency lights. Do you think it's the wormhole? Velia asked. Jace nodded. It's pulling the ship off course. If we can't correct it, we'll get dragged in. They reached the auxiliary room, an old backup station not used in years. Dust floated in the air. Jace wiped off a control panel and powered it up manually. No AI access here, he muttered. We'll have to do it by hand. Velia looked worried. You are not trained in navigation systems. Jace grinned. I'm trained in survival. He began flipping switches, reconnecting power lines, and scanning the external sensors. The wormhole's gravity was increasing fast. If they didn't act soon, the ship would cross the point of no return. Velia opened another panel and synced her data pad to the navigation relays. We must calculate the exact thrust needed to push us out of the gravity pull, she said. Too slow, Jace replied. I'm taking manual control. Manual? That's not standard procedure. It's not a standard problem. He grabbed the old-style control stick and activated the backup thrusters. The ship groaned. Engines are responding, Jace said. I'll push the nose up. You balance the thrust. Velia hesitated, but then followed his lead. As the ship turned, the floor tilted slightly. Lights flickered again. The sound of straining metal filled the room. Velia clung to the panel. If we fail, the ship will break apart. We won't fail, Jace said, his voice calm. I've flown through asteroid fields in worse shape. You are impossible, she muttered. You're welcome. With one final push, the engines fired hard. The ship groaned, then leveled. The red lights turned yellow, then green. They were clear. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just listened to the soft hum of systems returning to normal. Velia sat down slowly. You piloted a diplomatic ship like a fighter craft. I did what had to be done. That move was not in any official training manual. Jace smiled. Sometimes the manual gets in the way. She looked at him in a new way. Not just as a strange human, but as someone who truly understood danger, pressure, and instinct. Her kind always followed logic, but logic alone would not have saved the Cinex horizon tonight. You took a great risk, she said. You followed me. She gave a short nod. Yes, I did. The AI came back online. All systems stabilized, crew reports returning to normal. Commander Rennick, Lieutenant Velya, well done. They returned to their room in silence. The stars outside were still bright, but now there was something different in the air between them. Velya stood near her bunk, thoughtful. When I first met you, I believed humans were reckless. Jace looked at her. And now? She paused. Now I see that your actions are not without reason. You act fast, but not without thought. He sat back down. That's how humans survived Earth. That's how we keep surviving out here. Velya gave a small smile. It was quick, barely noticeable, but it was there. She turned away, but not before saying softly, "Thank you for not letting us fall." Jace leaned back, hands behind his head again. "Any time, Lieutenant. That's what roommates are for." After the night near the wormhole, things between Jace Rennick and Lieutenant Velya began to shift. The small room they shared felt less like two strangers forced together and more like a place where trust could grow. Velya spent more time watching Jace, not in suspicion, but in curiosity. She remembered the old Threxian reports about humans: wild, impulsive, sometimes dangerous. But this human was different. He was calm, confident, and yet unpredictable in a way that didn't feel reckless. One morning, the Scifi Horizon received a new mission order. The ship was to visit a nearby system where the Zelkar species had reported an unusual energy surge near their homeworld. The Zelkar were known to be difficult negotiators, proud enough to distrust any outsider, especially humans. The captain held a briefing. Jace was assigned as a diplomatic liaison for the Zelkar Council. Velya was to assist with technical and scientific information. Velya frowned. "You are not trained for diplomacy." Jace grinned. "Neither are they." The day of the meeting arrived. Jace and Velya stood together in the main conference hall, a large room filled with Zelkar delegates. The Zelkar looked at Jace with cautious eyes. Their whispers filled the room. "The human? Here? Strange choice." Jace ignored them. He smiled politely and began speaking in the Zelkar language, a language he had studied but never mastered. The Zelkar delegates exchanged surprised glances. Few non-Zelkar could speak their tongue so well. Velya watched carefully. The Zelkar were tense, their claws lightly tapping on the table. Jace leaned forward. "We are here to help understand the energy surge. It threatens not only your system, but the entire sector." One of the Zelkar, a tall figure with emerald scales, stood up. "Why should we trust a human? Your species has been unpredictable and dangerous in past conflicts." Jace met his gaze steadily. "Because we don't have time for old fears. We only have time to survive. And survive, we will. Together." The room was silent. Velya noticed how Jace's words, simple but firm, broke the tension. The Zelkar leader sat back down and nodded slowly. The meeting continued with technical discussions. Velya explained the ship's sensors and energy readings. Jace asked questions that showed he understood both the science and the politics. After the meeting, Velya said quietly, "You handled that well. I did not expect you to be so persuasive." Jace shrugged. "It's about listening and speaking, clearly. Humans do it all the time. At home, at work, anywhere." Velya looked thoughtful. "Your species uses emotion in communication. It can be dangerous." "Sometimes," Jace agreed, "but it can also be the key to connection. Logic alone isn't enough." Later, in the shared quarters, Velya sat at her desk studying a complex star map. Jace entered with 2 cups of steaming synth coffee. "Thought you could use a break." She accepted the cup, surprised by the gesture. "Tell me," she began, "how did humans survive so many challenges on Earth? War, famine, disease?" Jace sat beside her. "We adapted. We learned to trust each other, even when it was hard. We made mistakes, but we never gave up." Velya nodded slowly. "Our history is different. We rely on order and control. Emotions are unpredictable. Maybe that's why we balance each other," Jace said. They sat quietly, sipping coffee, looking out at the stars. Suddenly, an alert sounded. The ship's communications officer appeared on the screen. "Commander Rennick, Lieutenant Velya, we have an urgent message from the Zelkar Council. They want to discuss a security breach near their outer colonies." Jace and Velya exchanged a quick look. "Let's prepare," Jace said. "This mission is just beginning." Velya smiled faintly. "I am ready." As the ship changed course, Velya felt a growing respect for the human who had challenged her assumptions. The reports were wrong. Humans were not reckless. They were more complex, stronger, and maybe, just maybe, worth trusting. The Cinex Horizon was a ship of many secrets, and sometimes it held unexpected challenges. After the mission with the Zelkar Council, tensions on the ship began to rise. An unknown virus had been detected near the outer colonies, and the ship was ordered to enter quarantine protocols. The lower decks, including Velya's science lab and her personal quarters, were sealed off for safety. Jace Rennick watched the blinking quarantine lights from his bunk, feeling the weight of the ship's silence. That evening, Velya knocked softly on his door. "Commander Rennick," she said, her voice unusually quiet. "May I come in?" Jace smiled. "Always." She stepped inside, looking around the small room they shared. "The quarantine has sealed my quarters," she said, "and there is no available space nearby." Jace raised an eyebrow. "What are you saying?" Velya looked down, a rare sign of hesitation. "I request to stay in your room, Commander." Jace laughed softly. "You want to bunk with me?" "Yes, until the quarantine ends." He studied her carefully. Velya, the serious, logical Threxian, was asking for something personal, something that went beyond protocol. "Why me?" Jace asked. "You have saved the ship more than once. I trust you." His smile widened. "Flattery will get you everywhere." She met his eyes. "This is not flattery. It is trust." Jace nodded. "All right, Lieutenant. Welcome to my room." Velya's lips curved in a slight smile. "Thank you." The next morning, the ship's halls were empty. The quarantine had sealed off entire sections. Velya moved in quietly, unpacking her few belongings next to Jace's things. The small space suddenly felt busier, warmer. They settled into a new routine, sharing meals, exchanging information, and watching the stars, together through the small viewport. One evening, as Jace prepared a simple meal from the ship's food replicator, Velya approached. "Tell me, Commander," she said, "what do humans do to relax?" Jace shrugged. "Depends. Some play games, some listen to music, some talk." Velya's glowing eyes studied him. "You always seem calm." "Not always," he said with a grin, "but I've learned to enjoy moments like this." They ate in silence for a while, then Velya spoke again. "Do humans often share their space like this?" Jace thought for a moment. "Not always, but when trust is earned, yes." She nodded slowly. Trust must be earned. For the first time, they talked about more than work and ship systems. Velya told stories of her homeworld, how the Threxians prized order, discipline, and logic, how emotions were often seen as weaknesses. Jace shared stories of Earth, a world full of mistakes and triumphs, where people struggled but always found a way to move forward. They found common ground in their differences. The quarantine lasted longer than expected, yet the more time they spent together, the more they learned about each other's worlds. One night, Velya looked out the window, stars shining like diamonds. "Commander," she said softly, "I did not know humans were like you. You are not what I expected." Jace smiled. "Maybe you expected too little." She turned to him. "Maybe I did." A quiet moment passed. Then, almost shyly, Velya asked, "May I stay in your room even after quarantine ends?" Jace chuckled. "You're asking for a roommate?" "Yes." "Guess I'm lucky." Velya smiled, genuine and warm. In the vastness of space, two beings from different worlds found comfort in shared trust and quiet companionship. And for both, it was just the beginning. The Cenax Horizon was cruising through a quiet sector when the alarm suddenly blared. Red lights flashed across the control panels and the ship shook with the force of impact. "Pirates," Jace said immediately, standing up from his bunk. "We're under attack." Velia was already moving, her calm exterior replaced by sharp focus. The pirates were known for raiding supply ships and smuggling routes, but attacking a diplomatic vessel was bold, even reckless. The ship's security team scrambled. Jace grabbed a pulse rifle from the armory, his hands steady. Velia checked the ship's defense systems, preparing to assist. "Commander," the captain's voice came over the intercom. "The AI core is the target. If they capture it, the entire Alliance's network is at risk." Jace's eyes narrowed. "Then we can't let them get it." The pirates boarded through the lower cargo bay, cutting through shields and security protocols. The crew was outnumbered, but determined. Jace led a small team down narrow corridors, moving silently. He knew the ship's layout better than anyone and used guerrilla tactics, hit and run, ambushes, quick retreats. Velia coordinated with the ship's AI from the ops deck, rerouting power to locked doors and security turrets. "Jace," she called, over comms, "pirates are advancing toward the AI core. You need to hold them off." "I'm on it," he replied. In the dim corridors, Jace moved like a shadow. His pulse rifle fired precise bursts, disabling enemy weapons and taking out threats before they could react. One pirate lunged at him with a blade, but Jace sidestepped, using the ship's narrow space to his advantage. He knocked the pirate down with a quick punch and pressed his rifle against the pirate's chest. "Not today," Jace said quietly. Meanwhile, Velia found herself hacking into the pirates' communication system. She bypassed their encryption with unexpected speed. "Jace, I've found their leader's location. He's directing the attack from the main cargo hold. Then that's where I'm headed." Jace moved quickly, but the path was blocked by debris and downed security bots. He improvised, climbing over rails and using the ship's emergency ladders. At the cargo hold, the pirate leader was waiting, tall, armored, and confident. "You're too late, human," the leader sneered. "The AI core will be ours." Jace smiled. Humans don't give up so easily. The fight was fierce. The pirate leader was strong and skilled, but Jace was faster and smarter. Using quick moves, he dodged attacks and found openings. "Velia's" voice came through the comm, tense but hopeful. "Jace, I'm overriding the cargo hold's power locks. You'll have backup in 30 seconds. Jace nodded to himself. Good timing. With one final move, he disarmed the pirate leader and pinned him to the floor. "Game over," Jace said. The security team arrived, securing the prisoners. The AI core was safe. Back in the ops deck, Velia breathed a sigh of relief. "You were amazing," she told Jace when they met again. "Just doing my part," he replied. Velia looked at him thoughtfully. "Your actions, your instincts, they are beyond what I expected." Jace shrugged. "It's what humans do. When the stakes are high, we fight, we survive." She smiled softly. "I am beginning to understand why the Alliance values your kind." Jace grinned. "Took you long enough." As the ship returned to normal operations, Velia felt a new respect for the human who had not only survived but led when it mattered. Most and Jace? He knew this was only the beginning of their journey together. The Cenex Horizon drifted quietly through the endless black of space. The crisis had passed, but its effects lingered. After the pirate attack, the ship's leadership had new respect for Commander Jace Rennick and for Lieutenant Velia. Their teamwork had saved the ship and protected the Alliance's valuable AI core. Velia stood at the observation deck looking out at the stars. Jace joined her quietly, carrying 2 cups of synth coffee. "The stars look peaceful," Jace said, handing her a cup. "They do," Velia agreed, taking a sip. "But peace is fragile." Jace nodded. "We have to be ready for whatever comes next." Velia looked at him with a seriousness that made Jace pause. "Commander, I have made a decision." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Oh? Do tell." "I want to become the first official Threxian human liaison, to help our species understand each other better." Jace smiled. That sounds like a big job. It is, she said, but necessary. After everything, I believe the Alliance needs more connections like ours. Jace looked out at the stars again. Humans are known for bending rules. Maybe that's why we survive. Velia smiled softly. And perhaps that is why we must learn from you. Their conversation was quiet, but full of meaning. Two beings from different worlds, learning from each other. Days later, the Alliance Council met to discuss the future. Velia presented her proposal, explaining how humans and Threxians could work more closely together. Her words were clear and confident. She spoke not just as a scientist, but as someone who had seen the strength in humanity firsthand. The council agreed. Jace watched from the sidelines, proud but humble. He knew this was more than just about one mission. It was about the future of many worlds. Back on the Scinex horizon, life returned to routine. But Jace and Velia's bond remained strong. 1. Evening, as they reviewed star charts together, Velia looked up. Do all humans bend the rules to survive? She asked. Jace grinned. Only the ones who want to win. She laughed, a sound rare and genuine. As the ship sailed through the stars, their story became a symbol of hope. Proof that even in the vastness of space, trust and friendship could grow between the most unlikely of allies. And for Jace and Velia, this was only the beginning.